Thank you for joining me for another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dian. Today, I am joined by fellow podcaster, Tim Mitra. Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, you did. Surprising. Yeah.
This is the second time I've had you on a podcast. I think it's
true.
been like 2 years since I met you at Toronto Swift Toronto. And then I had you on my other podcast, the formerly OK Productive.
Okay.
Which was awesome. And I'll have a link to that. So glad to have you on again, I guess.
Cool.
But now talking more shop stuff with Swift. So what have you been playing around with lately?
Lately it's been a lot of I just got to turn my volume here. A lot of actually this guy over here, sorry.
No problem.
Lately it's been a lot of SwiftUI and CoreData. I've got a couple of app ideas that I've been playing with. So got into looking at CloudKit with CoreData, which is super simple. So I'm making an app for my wife, something she's wanted me to do for a number of years. So it's like it's just basically a record keeping app for her side project, and using CloudKit, I can sync the CoreData database. So she picks it up from her Mac or her iPad or her phone. It's the same. She'll see the same data, same records, right?
Could you get into details as far as what records you're keeping?
Yeah, well, I mean, she does costumes for the ballet, for Mississauga Ballet here, like, kid costumes and stuff like that. So she has like, they might be like 20 dancers or 12 dancers in a group, different ages, different sizes, that kind of stuff. And so they'll have themed costumes. So she keeps track of that stuff and like in an inventory at a warehouse. And so she needs to know, she puts everything into like Rubbermaid bins or whatever. So she needs to know what goes in those bins, right? So and we're thinking like maybe we'll have like a barcode of some type that they could just scan the bin and keep track of what goes in what bin and that kind of thing, right? So it's basically an inventory, if you will, right? And this kind of thing could be used for any number of things, not just costumes for ballet. But
gotcha.
Another app that I did back in 2010 is called Device Tracker, and came out of my managed services IT guy kind of work, where you want to keep track of what equipment you have and how much RAM's inside, what kind of hard drive, what serial number, things like AppleCare warranty, that kind of stuff. So I built a database to do that, and when the iPad came along, we transitioned that over to iPad, and we built that with CoreData as well. So I'd like
what
to
was
get
the original app built in, if you mind me asking?
Oh, it was originally a PHP app. It was PHP MySQL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was all done, on the web and with a browser and stuff like that.
Right.
Before.
Yeah. So what have you found as far as like CoreData, hooking up CoreData and CloudKit? Is it as easy as you thought it was?
It's easier than I thought it would be.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's I guess around 2019, a few years ago, 2018, 2019, they added an NS persistent CloudKit coordinator thing.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. That may be the wrong name, but in CoreData they added NS persistent controller, which basically I don't know what you know about CoreData specifically, but it has a persistent store. Obviously, it's an object graph representation of data. It's not necessarily like a database specifically, right? It is backed locally on the device byte SQL database, like so you can query the SQL to see what's inside your records and stuff like that. And it basically you can create relationships between objects in your database, right? And you can have different, umpteen different types of data. So you can have like UUIDs, and you can have, which, fits nicely into Swift and Combine.
Right.
You can have, SwiftUI and Combine, I should say. And you can have, dates and times and strings and, date. I think I said date already. But so you can store any number of things. You can store images inside in a binary format, or you can just store a path to the image on the device, which is what I initially started doing, because we didn't have tons of space on our devices back in the early days, right? So I want to be more svelte about that, more reasonable. So all that's managed, and you have a managed object context that you use, and I listened to a little bit of what Aaron was saying on your last podcast or previous podcast. You use what do you call them? Predicates to pull things out of the database and sort them.
Yeah, to filter stuff and select things and things like that. Yeah.
So when they added CloudKit around 2016, I want to say, don't quote me on that again, but they added CloudKit as a sort of web database, and CloudKit talks to iCloud, like specifically, right? So
right.
And Apple added in the ability they've added, I think last year or 2 years ago, they added a web interface to CloudKit, right? So you can go look at your cloud storage and look at records, and the way they translate, like in you have objects inside of CoreData, but you have like a, I forget what to call it now.
Schema.
Well, schema is what they have on the CloudKit side. So a CK record,
then you have like data entries that you add.
Yeah, so a CK record is what's stored in CloudKit, and it's a different kind of thing in I'm drawing a blank on all the names right now, but so what this NS persistent CloudKit coordinator does, if that's the name of it, it will automatically translate from the CloudKit structure, from the CoreData structure into the CloudKit records, right? Or CK records, they call them. A nice thing about that too is it built into that, or easy enough to do. You can subscribe to the CloudKit. There's a CK subscription database object or something like that. And then whenever you make a change on the data on CloudKit, you can subscribe and get a notification that the data has changed, and so presto changeo, you make a change on my iPad and it appears on my iPhone or my Mac or whatever, right?
Right.
So that is like, it's incredibly simple to do that. CoreData, what I like about CoreData, I know it takes a lot of bashing from people, but it's a pretty, if you've ever written any kind of CRUD stuff, like create, read, update, delete, from on any kind of like MySQL or Postgres or whatever, that you have to create all those sort of, you create the setters and the getters, if you want to call it that, right? You have to create all that kind of stuff, and you have to manage all that kind of stuff. And what's nice about CoreData is it handles a lot of that sort of heavy lifting for you, right? It does all that sort of stuff that you normally have to write in a CRUD flow for automatically, right? So almost automatically, seamlessly, really, right? I think the challenge is for people in terms of it, maybe just a bit of a learning curve and sort of understanding that you don't touch CoreData. You just call the save. You do a try on the save, and it either works or it doesn't work. It's kind of, there's not a lot of, I have to check and make sure this is the right record I'm deleting and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff just sort of happens automatically, right? When you delete a table row, with the slide to delete, and it instantly translates over to the CoreData, and the CoreData gets rid of the record, does all that sort of cleanup for you, So all that sort of.
It sounds like there's a lot of abstraction that will help you with modeling that data. And then it also has it sounds like threading is a big thing. As far as dealing with multi-threading, it does a better job with it.
Well, it's good. That's a good question. I think you'll probably be fine. People are probably yelling at their phones right now because I should say that CoreData by itself is not thread safe.
Right. Okay.
So I'm literally reading that out of the book, right? So, because there are ways to work with CoreData to make it thread safe, but you really don't. You kind of sort of don't need to do that, right? So, because it kind of it handles all that stuff on its own. Things like updating tables and stuff like that. You want to make sure you're doing those on main threads and stuff like that. But a lot of that kind of stuff is sort of managed for you. The data itself, the data management part of it, is pretty seamless, right?
Right. That's where you get into I'm trying to remember because it's been a while, but you have multiple managed, you have your managed object, you have your managed object, you have an object manager typically that's created in your app delegate and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to jump back and talk a little bit more about how you're hooking up to CloudKit. So is there any like automagic way that you're hooking up your changes in CloudKit to CoreData and your changes to
Yeah, I think automagic
CoreData to CloudKit?
Yeah, automagic is probably the good word for it. I'd have to crank open Xcode to see it specifically, but yeah, it is pretty straightforward. I mean, like you go into your info P list, or you go into your main section of the app where you define your capabilities and stuff like that, and you create a CloudKit entitlement, and you come up with like a backward URL scheme to name the record to name the database on CloudKit, and then when you go to create a record, it sends it up to CloudKit and stores it in that database you create by creating that name, and then you can log into the CloudKit dashboard thing on the web. And you can kind of go through, and it's a little tricky to navigate at first. Like I found as a newbie, it was a little difficult to sort of find my way around to sort of find the records. But you can see the records, and you can actually create new records right on the CloudKit dashboard. And you can, as long as you don't miss something, it doesn't tend to crash your app. But like if you, like I've played around with it because I'm, because of my PHP MySQL experience, I'm not afraid of going and manipulating the database in the cloud, as it were, and then having it update. Sorry, my dog's barking, but
no, it's okay.
That's Mac, my dog.
Nice.
Anyway, so you you can see the data, you can manipulate it, you can delete it right there on the CloudKit as well, right? So
yeah,
and then it'll automatically.
So are you just using subscriptions to keep the data, and like you're manually creating the entries in your CoreData when you get a subscription update? Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's pretty much all seamless as long as your scheme on your sort of the structure on the CoreData matches the scheme that's up in the cloud, then it's seamless. It's like pretty straightforward, right? So, and like I said, you can add like an ID field to it, like to keep it. So it's what is that? What's that protocol we use in SwiftUI? Identifiable, I think it is, where you have to use ID,
so that you have an ID attached to it.
Yeah, and then it really is not a lot of thinking involved, really, in terms of getting it set up, right?
I really like CloudKit, so I built MissKit because I wanted a way to pull. I basically use the CloudKit API, web API. And I can make calls from my server to CloudKit without like the CloudKit.
Yeah, so you're doing this without CoreData, like you're just doing a regular old app?
Yeah. So there's a web app and a watch app. And the watch app just uses CloudKit to let the web app know that there's a new watch, essentially.
Okay, right.
And then the web app uses the CloudKit API, and you could set up like an API key and then make REST calls essentially to CloudKit to do all the stuff that you would typically do with the CloudKit Swift API. So then I created this library because there's no CloudKit for server-side Swift, and it's essentially like a way to talk to CloudKit on Linux, basically is what I'm getting at.
Right.
And like it was interesting because you really learn like the structure of CloudKit and then like how data is sent, and like it really breaks it down for you how the fields work and things like that. Like I don't know how much more I want to do with CloudKit with HeartTwitch, which is the app, but I really would like to see like with MissKit if I could start doing like subscriptions on the server, like server to server subscriptions and stuff like that. That would be pretty cool to be able to figure that out, because I think like my only problem with CloudKit is more like on the business side, the fact that it's like really hard to transfer an app that uses CloudKit once it uses CloudKit. Like that's the biggest like pain in the neck that I've talked to other developers, and like, yeah, that's the biggest drawback, honestly, is like that. Because if you can do that, then it's like great. Now Apple has like a half decent backend that you can start with.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because it's always sort of the question is like, are you writing for Android? If you're writing for Android, then you might want to stick with just going as far as SQL on your app, right? Because then you can have a SQL instance on your Android that would match your iPhone app, right?
Right.
And
or
just
Realm or like
yeah,
any of the other
yeah,
ones out there. Yeah.
yeah, and actually, I watched something a really cool tutorial where they were talking about mocking, to test CoreData, and you basically fake it.
Right.
And so it kind of, if you abstract it away from being like the wise word on the street is don't put CoreData in your app delegate. In fact, I think, yeah, when you create a SwiftUI app now, Apple doesn't even put it in because there is no app delegate anymore in a straightforward,
You have like the new
yeah,
app
yeah.
protocol
So
or
they make a
structure.
persistent store something or other, persistent coordinator.swift file, and that's where they put all the CoreData stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, if you read the Ray Wenderlich books, that's what they tell you to do is like build a CoreData stack outside of your app delegate and put your stuff there, right? And as long as you have the correct references to it, you can easily pull things in and out, right? So
Yeah.
and if you're using MVVM, it's all good too, right? So in fact, a lot of the sort of tutorials I've seen on CoreData recently with SwiftUI specifically are sort of a more MVVM kind of flow, right? So
yeah. So how does that work with CoreData, like hooking that up to MVVM?
Well,
Because
you
it's
have
so built
central
around MVC and the view controller now.
Yeah, so so your model basically is, the CoreData does the model, right? And then you have a view model that does the sort of the translating back and forth between CoreData and your view, right? So you make change, you send that change in like a button action or something like that over to CoreData to take the data and do the try CoreData save kind of thing, right? And then and then you send back the information back if you want to reload the view. You basically do that by sending it back through that same sort of central view model, right?
Yeah.
So it actually translates pretty well with CoreData and SwiftUI apps, specifically.
Okay.
Like the app.
Are you using like a notification? Is it like a note? Because I know if you want to observe changes that are outside of like user interaction, you use like Notification Center for that, right? So do you use a publisher, or how do you do that?
Well, so there's this magic new bullet called Combine.
Yeah.
Or Combine.
That's what I'm saying. So do you use
it's Combine.
Center?
It's all straightforward Combine. You have an environment object and you use your observables, that kind of stuff. And
observables. Okay.
Yeah. So and you import Combine into the flow, and then you basically have the beauty of SwiftUI with Combine and CoreData as your data store, as your model, right? So you just you have your view model, and you have you create a variable instance of your managed object context as an environment variable, and presto changeo, it happens pretty magically, right? So like I said, there's been a few good tutorials on it. Some of them don't go all the way, like they kind of get as far as creating and updating, but they don't, or creating and deleting, but they don't really go into updating, which is sort of the challenging. That's probably the most challenging part of CoreData is updating a record you've already created, right? So
right.
But I mean, challenging, like it's not challenging at all. It's challenging for sort of a newbie or intermediate sort of person, but it's very easy.
Challenging in the sense it's hard to handhold, but it's like not hard once you've done it. I guess.
Once you've done one, you can basically then you can use the copy pasta paradigm.
Right.
we call it copy pasta at work when we get a lot of people don't abstract things; they just copy what everybody else did and paste it in, right? Copy pasta. Yeah. But like I said, once you get the hang, and it's as simple as you go creating a new record is super simple in CoreData, right? Creating an update is a little different because but then you can use that that unique identifier that we talked about, to make sure you're deleting the record you want to delete.
Just use the predicate to query it. And then
it's whatever at the index kind of thing deal, right? So,
yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they just announced WWDC.
Yes, it is.
Today.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'm losing track of time.
Yesterday, actually, yeah.
It's still March of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of new stuff with CoreData? Like, I feel like that's kind of the one blind spot where I feel like it could use something a little bit more Swifty.
I think I have to say that everything I'm saying today, and I'm supposed to say this for my corporate job as well, that anything I say today is my opinion only. It doesn't reflect any company I work for. But I can tell you, having followed, on More Than Just Code, the other podcasts I work on, we follow WWDC quite regularly, right? And we've been developing. Mark and I've been developing Apple stuff, for 10 or 11, 12 years, right? So we've been to WWDC. We've seen the lotteries. We've seen all the kind of ways you get in and out of it, right? And historically, this is the time of year when they make the announcement. And historically, it's always the first week of June, right? Last year was a bit different because of COVID. I think Apple was kind of, I'm speculating here, but they must have had to sort of, do some backpedaling and figure. Yeah. I mean, they did an amazing job. I mean, I've been to WWDC
I liked it
6 times, and this was like probably the best, type of WWDC I could have taken. I mean,
interesting.
It was almost like the Netflix model, because you got up in the morning and you had 20 things to choose from. It wasn't like you had to wait till 10 o'clock. Yeah. You could
and
consume.
Serenity did those the little summary videos every day.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah.
I like it. I've never gone to WWDC 2020. I was like, this is the year I'm going to try to go. And even if I don't get the lottery, I'll go to some alternative conference that's in the area. And of course, the apocalypse hit. So, I didn't end up going, but then I enjoyed it. I liked it. I think my wife was happy that I was around the last week of school.
Year?
So
okay. Yeah. Well, I can tell you. So last year, I booked the week off. I took the week off from work, and I, said, and I told my boss I'm focusing on. I mean, I can't go to, I can't get permission to do this, so I'm just going to book a week off, and that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be watching videos all week, and so we did actually some cool stuff. We did Zoom watch parties. So I have a Slack channel for our podcast, and so I reached out to a few fans and a couple of colleagues I work with, and we sat there. We looked at what videos were available that day, and we agreed on which videos we would watch. Of course, you've got latency with Zoom and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And some people were in California, some people were in Texas. I was in Toronto. I don't know if we had one guy from Berlin actually join us from one of the watch parties, and
nice.
We all just started this video at the same time, and we just kind of made comments in the Slack channel as we watched it. So it was kind of like we were sitting in the same room, even though we were halfway across the planet from each other. And that was a nice way to do it. But we decided, we would decide, which videos we wanted to watch, right? And so as a committee, we kind of just sort of picked and chose, and off we went and watched them. And that was a great way to watch, great way to consume it. But
yeah, I agree.
I got to say, I've lost count now. I think I've been 5 times, maybe 6 times. I hate to tell you that, but I've been to all sort of different flavors of WWDC. I went when there was not many people there.
Right.
I mean, there were 5,000 people there, don't get me wrong, but it was easier to get a ticket. I think I got my ticket 2 weeks after they were announced, kind of thing, the first time I went, right? And now it's super lottery, you're super lucky to get in, and,
right.
At the corporate job, we would put in, 5 or 10 applications, across the team, and some years when none of us would get picked.
Wow.
And some years 3 or 4 of us would get picked, right? So it's kind of there's no logic to it. I mean, people have all their conspiracy theories about the WWDC lottery, but I think it is completely random, because I've seen people on my team get selected who are just not even the right person who should be even going, like an intern or an owner or something like that, right? So it's interesting, but yeah. So let's circle back to the discussion. We're probably going to have the same thing. I'm recording More Than Just Code after this too. We're probably going to have the same conversation, but
I just wanted to say that in the next episode, I'm going to have John Wilker on from 360 iDev.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about WWDC in the next episode.
Yeah.
Organizing conferences in 2021, which is
he's the man. That's my second favorite conference. It probably is my favorite conference.
I gotta submit some talks, so hopefully
360
we'll get in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to let the audience know about that.
Yeah. Did you talk last year at 360?
Talked the last 2 years. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, really? Cool. Yeah.
About async when I was physically in Denver in 2019, and then last year I talked about combine.
You were in Denver in 2019?
Yeah.
I think I was there. I can't remember.
It's all a blur, right?
Yeah, I don't know. John and I are good friends. Well, I was
going to say, Go
I
ahead.
help him out with his website, with the 368 website. So I've been working with John for years. I went last year to the virtual conference. I thought that was really well done too.
Yeah, that was.
Really,
Yep.
really enjoyed that. Yeah. So yeah.
So I was gonna just covering core data. Like one of the things that like the trend that I've been seeing and that I'm kind of thinking something will happen with core data this year is the swiftiness of everything. Is like
Hmm.
there's been this momentum, and we see like we're getting rid of storyboards. We're getting rid of what else was there? Just anything that cannot be done in Swift is kind of slowly moving to Swift. So I'm kind of thinking and kind of hoping that like schemes, like all that schema data can be moved over to a Swift file and you could just model your stuff in Swift. There's one library I started looking at by John Estopia called Core Store, where you can do your whole schema in Swift. And that's pretty awesome. I like playing around with that. I was playing around with core data, building like a podcasting app for the watch. And
Nice.
that was fun. Just being able to like do my entire scheme in Swift, similar to how I do like, I do a lot of like server side Swift stuff, and like you can model your database for Postgres like in a Swift file, and it's nice to be able to do kind of the same thing with core data with his library.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, I was going to circle back on the how the transition from, I mean, 2020, was it 2014? They announced Swift, and we've been looking at a lot of Objective-C stuff that still comes out, and there's still a lot of Objective-C at Apple, right? Like if you look at
for sure.
look at the work, right? Look at a lot of frameworks, and it's taken time. I mean, like they did all the big heavy hitters like File Manager, user defaults, that kind of stuff. All those have sort of a Swift version now, and they're they're drop the NS and make it a lot easier to use. And I think that this year, because of the last couple of years, I guess, because of Catalyst and because of SwiftUI, we're seeing more capability on the Mac side to write Mac apps, right? So,
for sure, yeah.
Originally, I chose
and Apple Silicon is the big one too.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But yeah, we can. That's a whole another tangent. But coming back to the Mac is so Apple just released a couple of really cool tutorials. I don't know if you've looked at them or not. And actually, Ray Wunderlich just updated their SwiftUI book, which I started going through. I immediately jumped to the Mac chapter. Chapter 20 is on the Mac building a Mac app, right? And which is kind of good. So it's really nice to sort of see how you get away from the iPad paradigms and move into Mac paradigms, and how it's so simple to make a preference screen for a Mac app. It's so simple to make a menu item for a Mac app using SwiftUI. It's like stupid simple. And then my favorite discovery is this thing called App Store. I think it's AP Store. It's a property wrapper. Oh no, App Storage it's called. Right. And it does all that user.
Yeah. Basically, it uses user defaults for like
exactly
where your last position of your window is and stuff like that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's amazing. Like like it's and it's super simple. Like it's almost like a one-liner. Whereas user defaults is depending on how you're writing it could be several ways. You're going to create the record, and then you're going to read the value at whatever.
For me, the thing that like I've started to actually like is the file importer, file exporter stuff for document-based apps. And what is it called when you have like a file entity, but it's not the actual file entity? I can't think of what it is when you do sandboxing. Man,
too much to remember.
File wrapper.
Right.
I like it. Like now it's like, okay, now I get it. Cause I'm working on like building, taking my app speculative and being able to build like full sets of app icons and stuff with it, and be able to store all that metadata in like a folder, like a package as they call it, and figuring that stuff out and using file wrapper for it. It's like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like this actually is like helpful to me now that I've wrapped my head around how that stuff works and sandboxing and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gone down the path of sandboxing. I mean, I initially chose CoreData back in Tiger. I think it was 10.5. Yeah, that was Tiger, and I chose CoreData because I fully intended to make a Mac app to go with my device tracker iOS app, right?
Yeah.
And then but now I'm at a point where, using SwiftUI, CoreData, and this magic CloudKit stuff, I can totally do a version of, or either refactor the device tracker to use SwiftUI and combine and CoreData, and possibly even CloudKit, because we looked at iCloud a couple of years ago, because they had that sort of CoreData in the cloud kind of thing, and it was it got a really bad rap from people.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, I just remember people saying, "Don't do that," right? But and I actually when I started, I actually had a Mac account and an iOS account. Like, you had to have two separate accounts to build, for both platforms, right? And then they got merged those together. So yeah, we're now at a point with SwiftUI. I mean, I'm loving SwiftUI from the point of view of it abstracts tons of stuff away from what you need to know. And I've always joked with the guys on the show that one day Adobe's going to come out with iPhone Creator 1.0, and then it'll be dragging and dropping your CoreData instances and stuff like that, right? And I mean, they did that with Dreamweaver and a few other things, right? Like they kind of took web and they made it possible for a designer to be a webmaster, right? And I see that sort of the future, and I think that SwiftUI is pretty close to that, right? Like, in terms of you can actually drag and drop.
I mean, you've got live previews, right? That's kind of the
and you can design
standard
in those live previews. Those live, and people don't really know. I mean, we don't really see many tutorials on it, and maybe it's because of the speed of the machines or whatever. But you can drag a button right onto the live preview, and you can manipulate it and change the color of it and modify it, and as you do that, it creates the code.
The modifiers are super helpful, because it's like, I don't even know what's out there. And it's like until I actually click on the button and see, oh, these are the 50 different ways I can change this button. It's like, oh, then it, like, that's where drag and drop is like actually helpful. It's like the autocomplete, right? It's like letting you know what's available to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's from that point of view, like that's the future I envisioned was some sort of UI that would write the code for you, right? Which is where we are, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, my dog's come to say hi. There's no respect for podcasting.
I wanted to ask, how many podcasts are you doing right now?
Oh my God. So we're doing like 1 or 2 episodes a month on More Than Just Code. We used to do it every week. Okay. But because I was editing, I needed 8 hours to edit the show kind of thing, right? And I don't have that time. But so I'm on a podcast with Tammy called Hero's Journey, which is run out of the Pragmatic Programmer group, Pragmatic.
Yeah, we had Tammy on doing game dev stuff. That was awesome.
Yeah, so we do that one together, and we're using the same sort of formula we had for Roundabout. We have a writer on. And we talk about most of them are developers who've written books, kind of thing, right? And so we're having them on to talk about becoming a writer, and learning, taking their skill and turning it into a book, right? So excuse me. And let's see. So that one, I do Spotcast, which is a sci-fi podcast. So we started following Discovery when it first came out. I think season 4 is coming soon. Yeah. And we talk, we dissect each show. Jaime Lopez from More Than Just Code is on that, and my stepson Jonathan's on there. Jonathan's a huge comic book. I'm doing a podcast. Jonathan's a huge comic book nerd. He used to game reviews, and used to be a writer for the Toronto Star here in Toronto, right? And hang on. He so he's like super knowledgeable on sci-fi and comic books, and he's been collecting comic books since before I knew him, right? So so he's got 50, 60,000 titles, that he's read. He's read everything about Superman and Spider-Man and X-Men and whatever. So, when we watch things like WandaVision or the Winter Soldier.
So you talk about every episode as it comes out, more or less.
Yeah, that's the plan. So we started with Discovery, went to Picard, then we did the Lower Decks show, the cartoon that came out, and now and occasionally we'll do things like we'll jump in, we'll do we did the last 2 Avenger movies. We did a special episode on those. So we just did an episode on the Justice League Snyder Cut. And,
yeah, right.
Yeah, so we almost did 4 hours worth of podcasting for that one. I cut it down to 2.5, but it was, I think we had 3 hours of them just gabbing about this, So
yeah. I've been slowly trying to finish TNG, and I've been watching the MCU with the kids.
Right.
So I think hopefully we'll be done with those 2 pretty soon.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, since you've been doing podcasting for so long. So
Yeah.
this is my episode 87. That means I'm nipping at the heels of episode 100.
Right.
I need some ideas what I should do for my 100th episode.
Well, I'll tell you. So what we used to do is we used to have we had three main hosts, and occasionally one of them couldn't make it because of work obligations. So we started having guest hosts. So Tammy was a guest host. Greg Heel was a guest host before he went and joined the fruit company in California. And we've had Myron Todorov on as a guest host, and we've had Alexis Gallagher as a guest host. We've had we even had some of our fans on who came on and became guest hosts, right? What we do on big occasions is we tend to get a larger group of people to get together. So when we do a WWDC review, we'll get as many developers as we can, and we have sort of round table discussions about what was announced at the keynote, what was announced at the platform State of the Union, and kind of what you're looking forward to. What do you think about when SwiftUI hit? We kind of what happened, kind of show, right? And then I might recommend, we did that with Tammy's 100th episode for Roundabout. She had all of her former hosts on, including myself, right? So her mother was a host. She's had 4 or 5 different hosts on that show, right? So
wow.
we all got together and had one big happy whatever. I don't know if you've ever listened to her show. We used to do the 13 chaos questions where we ask, what's your favorite color and all that kind of stuff, right?
Nice.
And get, sort of ask. So we had her do the questions, kicking and screaming, right? And sometimes, if we're at a conference together, Joe Czaplinski from Release Notes and Gene McDonald, who's been on a number of podcasts. We often end up at 360 iDev, and we'll do a live show. So we did one live episode with John Milker was one of the on the chair, and Tammy was there, and Joe and Gene, and we just sort of you just make it a special sort of special event kind of thing, right? That might be. I think that would be what I would do is maybe get your other. You used to have a co-host on the other show, right?
Yeah, Eric.
Have him come by. Maybe pick a few people. I'm sure you could probably get a Paul Hudson and a John Sundell, and to join you and make an event out of it.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'll tell you what I did do though. So I wasn't sure when I went to 2019 WWDC. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get into the podcast booth. So they have a podcast booth that Apple sets up, and you have to book it in advance, and it was all I couldn't get until Thursday, so I was really worried. So I had bought a microphone that I plugged into my a Rode mic that plugged into my phone. Okay. And I just as soon as I ran into somebody at WWDC that I knew, I said, "Hey, can I ask you some questions about the conference?" Right. So I fired up the thing, and I made a live man on the street episode. I had Kylo Loco on it. I had Ish on it. Had Drew from Ray Wonderlic podcast. I had a bunch of writers from Ray Wonderlic that I ran into. Friends of mine. Mark was there. And we met one of the guys who came on the actual show, and we were in the podcast booth, and just sort of different ideas of what you can do to sort of make a special event. So we have a special live on man on the street discussion with developers, and it's one of our most popular shows, right? So the reruns, right?
Yeah. If only we had live events again. I'd have if only men were actually on the street,
Well, yeah, I mean, you can totally. I mean, this is the year to do it through Zoom. I mean, have a.
That's
big,
true.
Yeah, and you're doing
which we are doing right now.
This is your premiere video attempt, right? So
yeah, attempt.
You notice, I've set the stage here with my my junk in my basement to
Yeah, I don't even have my green screen. I got to get that set up. I got to record some conference videos pretty soon. So
yeah, I do have a green screen, but my basement's pretty small. It takes up a lot of room, right? So, but
well, thank you so much, Tim, for coming on.
Yeah, no worries.
Where can people find you?
You can find me. Twitter is probably the best places. I'm TIMMITRA on Twitter is where you'll find me, right? And of course, More Than Just Code podcast, Hero's Journey podcasts, and just Twitter's probably the best place.
Yeah, and we'll pull links to all the podcasts you're on and all the episodes we've mentioned today.
Right. Sure.
This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
People can find me on Twitter at LeoGDN. My company is Bright Digit. Please take some time to subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the podcast, if it's Apple Podcast or using Overcast or Google Podcast, Spotify, whatever it is, and give us a good review. And if you have any questions or anything else, you can reach me on Twitter as well. Thank you again, and we look forward to talking to you in the next episode.